All right. Hello, everybody. It looks like we're live. Welcome, welcome. Come on in and welcome to this monthly live session. Today, we're going to be talking about building a better pipeline. Major gift growth starts here. So, in my travels around and my chats with fundraisers and nonprofit leaders, I keep hearing about the challenges that you're facing in terms of building your pipeline for your major gifts. So I thought this would be a great topic for us to talk about today. So if you're just joining us and we haven't met yet, my name's Emma Luzzi, and I help major gift fundraisers build the skills, the systems, and the strategies that you need to hit your ambitious campaign goals. Because this is something I also know is that you have ambitious goals right now. So if you're just joining us, I want to ask you, and if you're new to these sessions, I want to say welcome. These are very interactive sessions. So it's one of the fun things about LinkedIn Lives is that we get to interact, you get to ask all of your questions, and it's all happening live. So I'm going to get us started early because I want to know from you, where are you joining us from? So go ahead and let me know in the comments where in the world you're joining us from. We often see folks from across North America and beyond. And if you are joining us to catch up on the replay, I know many of you catch up on the recording. I want to say welcome as well. And go ahead and use the hashtag replay in your comments. I always come back and make sure I haven't missed any questions and say hello. So yes, go ahead. It's just as much fun for us when we're catching up on the replay as well. So as we're getting started, go ahead and let me know where in the world you're joining from. Hello, Erin, who's coming from London, Ontario. Pam, I see Calgary. Pam, I just got back from Calgary. I was at the Western Canada Fundraising Conference, and there may actually be quite a few folks here who maybe met me for the first time at that conference. I had such an amazing time in Calgary. It's such a great city. Hi, Stephanie from Edmonton. And we see Emily from Grand Rapids. Hi, Nicole in Toronto. All right, keep on coming in. Sheila, good to see some familiar faces here. All right, so whether you're new or whether you've been joining me for a while, I want to say welcome. And I'm going to go ahead and dive into our topic today. We're talking about building a better major gift pipeline. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. I want to start off by talking a little bit about why I see fundraisers looking for new major donors in all the wrong places. It's quite typical when I'm working with fundraisers and nonprofits, especially when organizations are starting thinking about a big capital or comprehensive campaign. The first place organizations often start when thinking about new major donors is outside the organization. So we're thinking about cold leads. We're thinking about, maybe building up our new donor acquisition. And while there's nothing wrong with that, when we end up over focusing on looking outside of the organization for our building our pipeline and our new leads for major gifts, what happens is that we're overlooking the gold that's right in your own backyard. And that's the folks who are already engaged with your organization and already in your donor database. So we're going to be talking about that a lot today. And I'm a veteran, if you're just meeting me now, of 25 years of campaigns. I've worked across sectors, including arts, social service, health, education, in organizations ranging from small, medium, large to very large. I've done campaigns between $5 million to $200 million. So what I have seen in my travels and what I've often learned is the hard way about where we need to be thinking about looking for our new major donor leads, right? What we don't want to do, what we want to avoid is chasing after this tiny handful of elusive mega donors, right? We want to, that are far outside of your organization. We really want to shift that mindset. So that's the purpose of our session here today, because I believe this mindset of chasing after a small handful of elusive mega donors is costing us millions of dollars. So Let's go ahead and dive right in. I want to start with my strategy number one. I will say hello, Karen and Susan and Stephanie. I see folks joining us from Ann Arbor and Washington and Chicago. Welcome. Come on in. All right, so I want to start off by talking about my strategy number one, and that is, unsurprisingly, start with those who have already said yes. Because here's what I've noticed in my 25 years of major gift fundraising experience is donors with significant capacity will often start off by testing your organization with a small gift. This is surprising to folks, but it is a pattern that we see across organizations, across season fundraisers. I was on a panel of major gift fundraisers at the conference I was at last week, and each of us agreed that we see this same pattern, is that very large donors with significant capacity will often start out by making that very small gift. Typically, maybe through your direct marketing, your direct mail, your online, and that gift could be $50 or $75. So we really want to make sure that we're starting with those donors who say yes, because there are those folks who are potential major donors who are testing your organization. So for me, I feel like this is the single most strategic place to start thinking about building your pipeline. It's right in your own backyard, and it's with those who are already engaged with and supporting your cause. Because chances are, if you've got a significant individual donor base, that's going to be key to your major giving program. And there are already donors in that individual giving place who are just ready, willing, and able to make a greater investment in your organization, and they just haven't been engaged properly or asked yet, right? So if somebody's already given, even if it's a modest amount, they've already raised their hands with you, right? They're engaged and they're open to conversation. And this is something that I learned very early on in my career. I was very, very lucky when I was starting out at a fairly small organization to have an experience where a fairly small individual donor who'd been giving through our annual program gave a significant gift. So this donor had been giving, I believe, $50 a year for probably close to a decade. She gave loyally and faithfully every year to our holiday direct mail campaign. And what we did, which is before I knew it was a smart pipeline building strategy, it happened by accident. We actually invited all of our longtime donors to an open house where they had a chance to engage with our programming and meet our frontline team and meet our board members. And this donor came and we started a really great conversation about her interest in including our organization in her will. So we met, we engaged, we had multiple different meetings. She was one of my favorite donors to meet with. She was just an absolute live wire. She was well into her 80s, and she was so much fun. We always had really meaningful conversation about our mission, about our work, about her philanthropic priorities and interests, and basically the legacy and impact that she wanted to leave at the end of her life. So I was surprised, not so much now, but early on in my career, when I got a phone call from her one day and she said, you know what? I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait until after I'm gone. I actually want to see the impact that I'm making while I'm still alive. And she made a contribution to the organization of $250,000. So can you imagine going from $50 every year to our holiday campaign to a generous six-figure gift? So this is a great example. And this is not isolated. I've seen this occur over and over in my career. I've also spoke with many, many frontline fundraisers who have seen the same thing happen. All right, that leads me to my next point, which is very important for us to make sure that we're thinking beyond the limiting labels that we apply to our donors. Now, I am definitely a believer in making sure that you're segmenting your data effectively. This is a really important strategy. But what I see happening too often is that donors are permanently labeled based on their very first interaction with the organization. So let's say my first gift, like my donor I spoke about, is $50. Then for ever after I am a $50 donor. Perhaps I'm a monthly donor. I get definitely like categorized and permanently labeled as a monthly donor. And here is the big problem with that. There is no such thing as a big or a small donor. And if you've been following me for a while, you've been hearing me say that. I always say I want to get it put on a t-shirt. It's one of those things I say a lot. I think it would be a great t-shirt slogan. There is no such thing as a big or a small donor, because when we apply those labels permanently and indelibly, what we're doing really is holding back our organization, right? When we can't see past these labels, we really are leaving millions of dollars potentially on the table at our organization. So I'm going to give, actually, before I do that, I'm going to give you a couple other examples. But I love to hear from you, because when I've talked about this before in my live sessions and when I speak at conferences, I always hear fascinating stories from folks that confirms this idea that there's no such thing as a big or small donor. So this is the moment I want to hear from you. Have you ever been surprised by a donor who gave significantly more than you expected? So it could be someone that you had been thinking of as an annual donor, could be someone who's maybe been giving smaller monthly gifts, could be someone who is a member who subsequently increased their giving significantly. I want to hear from you, because there are so many great stories out there. And I think these stories really help inspire others to see there's no such thing as a big or small donor, and help people start thinking about how to engage everyone in that donor base and not make assumptions about their capacity. So I'll share one of my favorite stories, which I discovered working with a client. And that was a donor who had joined up as a member. This was a grassroots advocacy organization, so very strongly based on membership. And I believe membership was, $50 or $75 a year. So this donor had signed up as a member and started engaging in their events and their activity. And, he surprised them the first time when he was meeting with the board member, and he indicated he wanted to make a larger donation. And his next gift was $10,000, which was a significant gift for this organization. So he went from a $75 membership with engagement with the organization, participation in their events, understanding and learning more about their mission. He went to $10,000. So he was making a major gift for the organization of $10,000. And subsequently, over the course of time and engagement, that ultimately ended up turning into a $7 million gift in his will. So, which, sadly and happily, that was realized, I think, before anyone had anticipated. So it's always very tricky for us when we have our relationships with our donors. And they make a generous gift that's going to be realized in their will. So it was a loss to the organization for sure, and such a gift, though, too, to be able to continue his legacy with that $7 million gift. So I want to hear from you. Who has surprised you? Don't be shy. If you have a great story, someone surprised you. I know someone, oh my goodness, I'm stretching for who shared this story. Last time I talked about this, someone had shared a story about a $1,500 donor, so someone in their mid-level, subsequently giving $1 million gift. So these stories abound. I want you to go ahead and let me know in the comments if you have a story where a donor surprised you. Don't be shy. Love to hear these, and these are such good inspirations, because yeah, it's very, very important. And you absolutely have these donors hiding in your database. I don't care if you're small. The first example I shared of the $50 donor giving $250,000, that was with a small organization, very small team. So these donors are at small, medium, large, and extra large donors. So we have a couple of great stories coming in. I'm going to share these briefly. All right, Nicole shares, years ago, I was working at a hospital and a man walked into the foundation office. We were in the basement. I know we're always in the basement as fundraisers. I want to advocate for us to have better office space. You were in the basement. He made a $1 million commitment to the assistant who was sitting at the front desk. He'd been making a gift of under $100 for years before, and we had no idea of his capacity. I love this story, and I've heard this story so many times. And I've experienced this story personally as well. So I love that is a great example. We never typically imagine a $100 donor who's giving to our direct marketing program becoming a $1 million donor. All right, so we're getting a few of these and I love it. Sheila was sharing, yes, there was a regular annual donor of small amounts. She reached out to us, but she was not entirely sure what her next gift would be. And after conversations and engaging her with the organization, this is key, having great, meaningful conversations with your donors. She gave a $100,000 gift in her lifetime and left us a gift in her will. And I see that typically as well quite often. Is sometimes these smaller donors we've labeled smaller will give a significant commitment, and also you see them including you in their will as well, which can subsequently be, in the case of my $250,000 donor, would have been a multi-million dollar bequest. All right, so a lapsed $1,000 donors with great stewardship, we're seeing all of these patterns here, became a $50,000 donor, and even better, that was an unrestricted gift. I love this. I'm seeing a couple of folks I can only see as LinkedIn user on my end, so I apologize if I'm not using your name. For some reason, I use the platform I use to stream sometimes doesn't actually identify your name. All right, so we have another LinkedIn user saying, I've seen a monthly donor who received a random thank you phone call that led to a deeper conversation, which subsequently led to an estate gift from her recently deceased dad. A $100 monthly gift unlocked a $50,000 donation. And I'll jump in here as well and talk about monthly gifts. I've heard a story about a monthly donor that subsequently turned into, I think, a 7-figure gift. The examples abound about this. And I'm so happy that folks are sharing their stories, because I think this is such an inspiration to everybody who thinks it's not me. There's nobody who's in our database that has this kind of capacity. But, I hope you're inspired by these stories coming from small, medium, large, very large organizations, is that these generous donors are already giving to you. They've already said yes. And the challenge is that we are labeling them as small donors, and we are basically holding ourselves back from the real potential of our donors when we are indelibly labeling them in that way. So I love this. Keep the stories coming if you have other examples. And then I'm going to continue to talk a little bit more about something very practical that you can do right away, because I love doing that in this session as well. I love giving you practical actions to take back beyond these mindset shifts that are also very important. So I actually have 2 overlooked donor segments that I want you to be thinking about tracking right now, that are really going to be helping you when you're thinking about building your pipeline. And then we're going to have a few minutes to answer any questions. I like to keep these sessions to a really tight 30 minutes. I know you're busy, so I like to deliver a lot of value in a half an hour, and also give you some time to ask questions as well. So we'll make sure you're out of here on the half-hour mark. And before we wrap up, here are some next steps for you in terms of the 2 overlooked donor segments that you should be tracking right now. The first one is just thinking about donors who are giving larger than average donations. So this entirely depends on the size of your shop. I've seen people do it depending upon the size of your shop and your fundraising program, starting at $1,000, but you may even start at 500. You may start at 250. There is no hard or fast rule here. What we're really looking for is a donor that is giving a larger than average donation, perhaps to your annual giving program, and just making sure you have a process in place. This is key. Having a process in place to regularly identify, review, and qualify these donors for your major gift portfolio. The second thing I like to layer on with that larger than average donations segment is the long-time donors with significant cumulative lifetime giving history. If you heard or read any of these stories that we've been sharing, you'll notice there's a pattern there as well. That, maybe they were giving $100, maybe they were giving monthly, but oftentimes there is a long lifetime history of engagement with the organization. And we really need to be thinking about that and tapping into that. In my case, my sort of first early wake-up call of the donor who went from 50 to 250,000. That was 10 years they'd been giving to our organization, and that was kind of the first time that we had segmented those long-time givers out. She also shared something really interesting to me, is that she actually supported up to 10 different organizations that had a similar mission or focus as our organization did. And she shared that not once had any of them actually reached out to her personally to engage her, to speak with her, or to even give her a thank you call. So this is a major untapped opportunity here when you're looking at those longtime donors with cumulative lifetime giving history. So they're really flying under your radar oftentimes, especially if the cumulative giving history is of many small gifts. It can really add up, especially if they're monthly recurring donors. Don't overlook these longtime donors. They're one of my favorite segments to be thinking about when you're building your pipeline. And the bonus here is that it's such a warm call. So many people are struggling to make these very cold calls to these, big, or trying to figure out how do we get connected to this elusive mega donor, because it's such a cold connection. But the beauty about this donor who may have a long time giving history is it is a warm call. It's such a fun call to make, right? It's such a fun call to make because you've already established a relationship. They already have a track record of interest and engagement in your mission. So don't overlook those folks. I have a couple of more comments coming in. I want to make sure. So a great practice is to look at donors who increase their giving year over year. That's also a really good approach as well. There's all sorts of ways you can slice and dice this. They're telling you they believe in your organization and they have the income to invest in your mission. So I love that. Let's add that to number 3 segment. Let's have a look and see donors who are increasing their giving, increasing their engagement with your organization, and make sure we're not missing those folks as well. So these are really good. These are 2 really good places to start in terms of overlooked donor segments that you need to be tracking right now. And the great thing is, and the thing that's sometimes a gap for a lot of organizations, is that what happens is we don't necessarily have the systems and the processes in place to actually do this. So this is a good spot to be starting to think about that for sure, because the foundation of building a better pipeline, in addition to these things I've been talking about today, is making sure that you have a clear and repeatable process, a clear system to make sure you're identifying these folks on a regular basis so they're not flying under your radar for too long. All right, so I am going to open things up to questions. If you've got a burning question about building a better pipeline, I want you to go ahead and drop that below. And I'm also going to offer you a great free resource that if you're building your pipeline, you are going to want to download. So go ahead if you've got questions. And I wanted to share with you, if you don't have it already, I have a free guide on building a pipeline and finding new major donors for your mission. And you can go ahead and download that at blueskyphilanthropy.com/guide. And it's some of the strategies I shared today. It's some bonus strategies. I do a little more diving in depth to also what you need to be thinking about in terms of finding folks, those hidden gems in your donor base, because it's so important. Share a few bonus strategies I haven't had time to talk about today in this guide. So go ahead and make sure you download that. And I'm going to open things up for questions to folks. While I do that, I'm just going to recap what we talked about today. So we talked about why fundraisers are looking for donors in all the wrong places. We are often trained to start our search and our pipeline building and are looking for major donors outside of our organization. We often are over investing in chasing cold leads. We're maybe over focused on acquisition. And while connecting with cold leads and donor acquisitions are both important parts of your fundraising strategy, what is even more important is that you're not over focusing on those and neglecting those hidden gems that are already in your donor base. We shared so many different success stories about those donors that started out by testing organizations with a small gift and ultimately subsequently made gifts into the 6 figures, into the 7 figures. So I hope you found that inspiring as well. We talked about starting with those who already have said yes. Very important. You have people who are engaged with your organization, who are ready, willing, and able to make a greater investment in your mission. And of course, we talked about the fact that we really need to be shifting our mindset so that we're looking beyond limiting labels, because there is no such thing as a big or small donor. And finally, I shared just 2 overlooked segments that you can be thinking about. There are many more, but 2 of the most overlooked donor segments that you need to be tracking right now. That is your donors who are giving larger than average donations, and also your donors who have a significant lifetime giving history, whether that's length or it's cumulative, lifetime giving. Those are 2 often overlooked spots. All right, so let me go back to the questions here. Sheila is asking, we have thousands of friends, i.e. they're giving $50. These $50 donors, how do we decide which ones to reach out to? Right now, we're looking at those who gave larger gifts in the past, previous volunteers, and longevity of giving, but there's still too many to reach out to them all on a personal level. Is there something else we can do to narrow the focus to find those that are ready to give more? Yes, I would say this might be a great time to be thinking about doing a survey. I don't know if you've done a donor survey before, but a very simple donor survey where you're understanding a little bit more about the donor. You're also, asking them about their personal story, if they have a personal connection with the organization. I would say definitely a survey might be a good place for you to start. Again, it doesn't have to be overly technical or overly long. It can be a great engagement great engagement device. And my advice is that you think about doing a donor survey if you've got a very, very large base like that. Other strategies can include, if you're able to have an open event, like our open house was really helpful, and segmenting that in terms, that can be a little trickier, but there are ways to do that in terms of even having, for example, even having a digital or a Zoom, what's the word I'm looking for, town hall. If there's a way to engage folks in a broader event like that. So that's a couple of really quick ideas, but I'd say survey, event are all really useful for sure. Yes. Oh, and great. I love this. So other folks are chiming in with ideas from Sheila. I always love to talk about the wisdom in the room, the collective wisdom. So I love this. If you've got ideas for Sheila, go ahead and drop them in the comments as well. So yes, any connection to current volunteers who can be door openers. You can also look at demographics, identify those who may have an affinity to give to the organization. No recent survey. Yeah, so Sheila, I think that's my idea for you, is to do a survey. All right, we've got another question here around beyond the gift data. What are the 3 data points that you recommend organizations systematically collect to identify the hidden gems in your database? So the super simple place to start is definitely thinking about RFM. A lot of folks are probably already doing that, but And I'll explain what that acronym is in a sec. So recency, frequency, and monetary value as well, like, is a very useful place to start. So frequency can be a great one. Somebody already had mentioned looking out for gifts that had increased year over year, just looking out for engagement with the organization as well. But making sure you're doing this on a regular basis is really important. So if you're not already doing the foundational basics around making sure you're pulling regular lists and looking at recency, frequency, and monetary value, that's a useful place to start. So for example, we're thinking about frequency. I might be looking for donors who are giving multiple times a year. I might be looking at our monthly donors, because like that's sort of an extra level of commitment as well. Just to give a couple of different examples. So these are all great ways to slice and dice your data. Sometimes we have data experts in the audience, so go ahead and share your collective wisdom as well. I always say I'm a relationship fundraiser who kind of learned about the data by necessity. Yeah, it's sort of not not my original kind of area of expertise. I understand it well enough to make sure I can do my job as a major gift fundraiser and strategist. But there are folks who are real good data strategists who kind of focus on that as a specialty. They may have some additional recommendations, but those are a few of mine. I'm trying to think if there are any additional ones. Oh, and I'm just keeping an eye on the time because I see we're a couple minutes past. So I'm just going to scroll up and make sure I didn't miss anyone. So we talked about donor surveys. We shared some collective wisdom. Thank you. And we talked a little bit more about some additional data points. What are 3 data points? Okay, just wanted to make sure I've gotten I've answered all of this. All right. Yes, great. I love this. Yes, and apologies if you were showing up as LinkedIn user in my StreamYard. I want to thank you for your contributions. Hello, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Pam. Yes, I had a great time in Calgary. Such a great city. So hopefully everybody found that helpful. Go ahead if you have any additional questions to download my guide there. When you do that, I also stay in touch with you about upcoming live sessions like this. I do these very regularly on a variety of different topics. I just did a really popular one a couple of weeks ago on creating compelling offers for your major donors. And that we got lots of great feedback on that. So we always keep in touch with you with our email, let you know about live sessions that are coming up, and all sorts of other resources and opportunities as well. Erin, thanks so much for joining us. And Pam, yes, boy, I did not expect Calgary to be as busy as it was with the G7, but I think that made it even more fun because there was a big conference, there was the G7 starting to gather in Calgary. So it was a lively time, let me tell you. It was a lively time at the conference. So anyway, I'm going to say thank you for joining us, and I hope you keep in touch. Go ahead and download that guide and look out for emails from me about additional resources for you. And I'll wish you all the best. Happy almost summer. Thanks so much for joining us, and make sure you stay in touch. If you've got any follow-up questions, you can also go ahead and drop those below as well in the comments. All right, my friends, happy fundraising. We'll talk to you soon.